Explainer. Okay, what if I told you that your most mundane, everyday routines are actually steeped in a rich, deeply global history? Today, we are going to explore exactly that by looking at some truly remarkable glimpses of India.
To get us started, I want you to really think about your daily breakfast for a second. What did you have this morning? Maybe a piece of toast, a strong cup of coffee to wake you up, or perhaps a hot cup of tea. I mean, it seems simple enough, right? But the origins of these simple morning comforts serve as the absolute perfect premise for our historical journey today. They're going to unlock incredible stories of ancient armies, mystical monks, and bustling colonial ports. So here is our itinerary for today. We'll start with the flavors of India, move on to Goa's traditional patters, visit Coorg for coffee and valor, explore the legends of Assam tea, and finally wrap up with a cultural brew. All right, let's dive right into part one, the flavors of India. We can actually look at India's incredibly rich, diverse cultural history entirely through the lens of three things most of us consume on a daily basis: bread, coffee, and tea. Think of these everyday items as almost like magical portals, revealing Portuguese, Arab, and Chinese footprints that have been left on Indian life. By exploring three very distinct regions, we'll see exactly how global history becomes local tradition. Moving right along to part two, Goa's traditional potters. Stepping off our virtual train into the warm coastal state of Goa reveals a heavy but really beautiful nostalgia for the old Portuguese days. As one local saying perfectly captures it, those eaters of loaves might have vanished, but the makers are still there. You see, the Portuguese ruled Goa for centuries, and they brought with them a deep, deep love for leavened, oven-baked bread. And while those rulers may be long gone, the local makers have kept those time-tested furnaces burning bright. Just imagine waking up in a Goan village. You honestly wouldn't even need an alarm clock. Instead, you'd be woken by a very specific sound, the jeng, jeng thud of a specially made bamboo staff hitting the ground. This musical entry heralded the morning arrival of the traditional baker. Kids would literally wake from sleep and run to meet him, not even bothering to brush their teeth first. Why? Because they desperately wanted to pick out special sweet bread bangles from his huge basket. As the elders used to joke, why take the trouble of plucking a mango leaf to brush your teeth when hot tea could wash and clean up everything so nicely afterward anyway?
Now, these traditional bakers, known in Goa even today as potters, were the absolute pillars of the community. It was a highly profitable family profession that was passed down proudly from father to son. Historically, you could spot a potter from a mile away by his unique dress, which was the single-piece long frock reaching down to the knees called a kabai. And because baking was such a prosperous business, the baker, his family, and his servants never starved. In fact, having a plump, kind of jackfruit-like physique was seen as an open testimony to their happy, comfortable lives.
And bread isn't just a breakfast thing in Goa, it is the absolute anchor of social life. For example, marriage gifts? Completely meaningless without the sweet bread known as the bowl. A party or feast loses its charm without basic bread. If the lady of the house is hosting her daughter's engagement, she absolutely must prepare sandwiches. And for Christmas, cakes and bolinas are non-negotiable. The pater and his furnace are just fundamentally tied to the village's identity. Okay, let's pack our bags for part three, Coorg, coffee and valor. Now we are traveling south, landing midway between Mysore and the coastal town of Mangalore, into the misty, evergreen rainforests of Karnataka's smallest district. Welcome to Coorg. If Goa smells of sea salt and fresh bread, the air here literally breathes of invigorating coffee. 30% of this district is covered in evergreen rainforests, with these beautiful colonial bungalows tucked quietly under tree canopies on vast coffee estates. But Coorg is famous for more than just its landscape. It's home to the Kadavus, a fiercely independent, proud race of martial men and beautiful women. What is truly fascinating about the Kodavu people is their ancestry. There are two main, slightly wild theories about where they came from. One story says a chunk of Alexander the Great's army moved south along the coast and just settled here when going back became impractical, eventually marrying the locals. The other theory points directly to Arab origin, and this is actually supported by their traditional dress, the kupiya, which is this long, black coat with an embroidered waist belt. It bears a really striking resemblance to the kufiya worn by Arabs and Kurds. And this martial legacy is absolutely no ancient myth. It carries right through to modern times. The Coorg Regiment is one of the most decorated in the entire Indian Army. In fact, General Karyappa, the very first chief of the Indian Army, was a Corgi. Corgi homes have a deeply ingrained tradition of hospitality, and you'll find families always ready to recount countless tales of valor about their sons and fathers. Amazingly, get this, even today, Kodavas are the only people in India permitted to carry firearms without a license. How wild is that? But Korg is a district of massive contrasts. Beyond the martial history and the endless coffee plantations, it's just bursting with life. You've got the river Kaveri getting its water from these hills, teeming with massive mahasir fish. For the thrill seekers out there, there's river rafting, canoeing, and rock climbing. You have macaques and wild elephants just roaming the canopies. And in a really beautiful surprise, at the nearby Bailakupa settlement, you can find red, ochre, and yellow-robed Buddhist monks living on India's largest Tibetan settlement. It is a true microcosm of diversity. All right, moving across the country to part 4, Legends of Assam Tea. From those southern hills, we transition eastward to Assam. Here, densely wooded hills give way to an endless, magnificent sea of green tea bushes stretching literally as far as the eye can see. Assam actually has the largest concentration of tea plantations in the world. But who discovered tea in the first place? Well, we have two completely contrasting legends. On the left is the Chinese legend, an emperor who always boiled his water before drinking it. One day, a few leaves from the twigs burning under the pot accidentally fell into the water, giving it a delicious flavor. Boom, tea leaves. On the right, we have a rather intense Indian legend. Bodhidharma, an ancient Buddhist ascetic, kept falling asleep during his meditations. So actually, he cut off his eyelids. Yep. 10 tea plants supposedly grew out of those discarded eyelids, and when those leaves were put in hot water, they completely banished sleep. Now, moving from myth to history, we can clearly trace the timeline of this incredible beverage. Tea was first drunk in China way back in 2700 BC. It didn't actually make its way to Europe until much, much later, in the 16th century, and interestingly enough, it was consumed more as a medicine than a casual afternoon drink. Today, managing these plantations is a massive scientific and agricultural endeavor. For instance, the period from May to July is absolutely crucial in Assam. It's the second flush, or sprouting period, which yields the absolute best tea of the year. And here is a linguistic connection that I absolutely love. Think about how completely ubiquitous the word chai is in India today. Well, words like chai and chini are actually derived from Chinese. It just goes to show how deeply intertwined ancient Asian trade and history are with India's modern-day, everyday cup of chai. Speaking of the modern day, over 800 million cups of tea are drunk every single day throughout the world. To put that into perspective, that is just a mind-boggling amount of tea. It is truly a global phenomenon with deeply ancient roots.
Which brings us to our final segment, Part 5, A Cultural Brew.
Let's tie all these incredible threads together, shall we? What we've seen today is the unique, almost magical power of geography and history. India doesn't just experience global influence. It absorbs it, perfects it, and completely localizes it until it feels entirely its own. We started with Portuguese bakers who became an irreplaceable part of Goan village identity. We moved to the martial traditions of Coog, possibly stemming from ancient Greek or Arab armies, yet fully integrated into the Indian Army's proudest ranks. And finally, we saw how an ancient Chinese discovery morphed into Assam's massive tea industry, which now fuels the world. So, I want to leave you with this provocative thought. Take a look around your own kitchen. Think back to your breakfast this morning. What epic global journeys, what ancient armies, and what centuries of trade are quietly hidden right there in your everyday routines? The next time you butter your morning bread or sip your afternoon tea, remember, you aren't just having a meal, you're literally taking a bite out of history. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey today,